need someone to show me my place in all this.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to ReelTime for the real everyday movie fan. I'm Ryan Murphy.
I'm Josh Williams.
And today we're giving you our special, spoiler-filled, super long review of Star Wars The Last Jedi.
Now, for any of you who follow us, you're wondering why we didn't do a normal review and then a spoiler review. I told him when we saw the movie Thursday night that after the movie got out, there was so much that needed to be digested, at least on my end, and so much that needed to be thought about that I couldn't do a review right then and there. I needed to think about it and even see it again before I can do a review. And even then, after in that aspect, I still felt like talking about this movie, we can't talk about it not in a spoiler setting. Like, it was so hard to talk about this movie in my head without giving up spoilers. So here we are. It's a spoiler-heavy review. I think I will be giving I don't know what we're going to do as far as non-spoilers. I know some people who haven't seen it yet want us to know. But here it is for all of you who have seen it. We're going to get right into it. Of course, you know this movie was written and directed by Rian Johnson, and it stars Daisy Ridley, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, John Boyega, Adam Driver, Oscar Isaacs. And that's really,
Tran, Laura Dern.
There's quite a lot of other big name actors.
Benicio del Torro. So
it was a lot of big characters, but that was probably the biggest ones. And Domhnall, Gleeson, Andy Serkis, so on and so forth. Let's jump right into this. I actually, before he goes off on a tangent, I actually walked out when this movie ended. I sat there because I couldn't tell if I liked it or didn't like it, and I knew after I got up and walked away, I knew I was disappointed, which actually frustrates me. Because I had such high hopes for this, and I love The Force Awakens so much. But this, I think I narrowed it down what I liked and didn't like. Because there's a lot I liked and a lot I didn't. But I came away still disappointed. And I was happy to see after I was scouring the internet, kind of get different perspectives, I wasn't alone. But I still ended up liking it. So I'm going to still give it a fresh score, but it's a very low fresh score of a 6.4 out of 10. So we're gonna go into more. But what about you? Give us your score first.
Considering the very first thing you said is there's so much that needed to be digested. There's so much that needed to be thought of. I think illustrates the key, just the absolute fundamental difference in the way we see this film. I'm gonna go ahead and give it I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I'm gonna give it a 0 out of 10. So
there's absolutely nothing you liked about
it. There's aspects I like, but I kind of like little aspects I like. But it's also kind of like if you spend a night with a girl that's very lame but has a couple of highlights, and the next morning you realize you wake up in a puddle of blood, you've been framed for murder, there's a knife in your hand, and your life is ruined. It's like, do you give that night a 1 or 2 out of 10 because of those little moments? But isn't that canceled out by the fact that it's an entire travesty to fiction? To your life. So for that reason, I was thinking about giving it a 1 or 2 out of 10 because of those moments that were kind of nice that I liked, and I'll talk about that. But given what this does to the franchise, given what this says about the place we are in the world as far as storytelling and art, it's beyond question. It has to be a 0. So
let's kind of start off in the spoiler-heavy atmosphere here. Let's start off just kind of overall story. What did you think of kind of just the overall story of it? Did you hate
in order for me to even begin to talk about that, I have to sum up my rant. Now I did my rant. Go ahead.
Yep.
You can watch my rant. It's 15 minutes long. If you want, that will kind of really
Actually, we'll put a thumbnail of it right here in front of him. If you want to check it out, go ahead. So that you can see what the hell this guy's talking about that's so angry at this movie. Or at the last movie, my rant was about The Force Awakens and how it was so just from the outset was lame and stupid. But for me, the two things, if you're going to make a sequel to Return of the Jedi, it's pretty unacceptable to feature Luke. Oh man, we're gonna see where's Luke been for 30 years. Oh, he didn't do anything. He didn't rebuild the Jedi Order. For me, that is equivalent to making a sequel to The Sound of Music, where Maria and the Captain Von Trapp got divorced immediately after the first film, and they've been divorced for 50 years. And you come back, and they're like, well, maybe they can get it right this time, and they fall back in love. It's like watching a sequel to Good Will Hunting, where Will immediately went back to his old ways.
and they're gonna make a sequel, and hey, maybe this time he'll change. You know, it's like insert any film. Like take your film and then eliminate the victory, and then start the premise over and see if and repeat the story. That to me is what it is. It's an insult to everything that was a victory about the Return of the Jedi. This whole thing about the First Order and Snoke, and there's another Empire that's come back. There's some guy named Snoke who looks just like Palpatine, who seduced another Skywalker to the dark side, and now he wears a black cloak and a black helmet. Well, the cloak is okay, but the helmet, and now he I mean, the whole thing was just so idiotic. But at the very least, I thought, well, it's not like this First Order thing. It is the Empire, but it might be they might be doing something interesting where it's kind of a small thing. Like that's the thing, is I talk about in my rant, a lot of people were talking about this at the time. They never really specified how big the First Order is, or like maybe it's just a small thing and the Republic is just not doing its job fighting it, except for Leia, who's helping. But like you didn't know where it fell in the grand scheme of things. So I thought, I'm going to watch this movie and I'm going to see what Rian Johnson can do with it. And you said, oh, you're going in wanting to hate it, and I'm like, I guess, but it's also like, I mean, that's like saying you pause Battlefield Earth and then you're going into the second half wanting to hate it. It's like, I'm going into the second half knowing the premise and everything they're doing isn't working. I wouldn't call that wanting to hate it. I think that you have to be going into this wanting to really like it, like really desperately wanting to like it, to even consider it as valid, or any of these story points as valid. But literally, the first 10 seconds of the film, the opening crawl, right away, took my fears and shot them. It took my expectations that were already like here and shot them into the basement, because immediately they established the First Order is the Empire. It is just the Empire that's come back. The Republic has been crushed, and it's literally just trying to take us back to before even Episode 4. We talk about this. It's not to say that you can't have a new threat that decimates the galaxy, that does bad things, that characters can't face new threats, that characters can't go back to dark places, but it can't be basically this trying to repeat the same thing and repeat the same story to the same characters who have already gone through it before. So this whole, and I'll just flash forward real quick to the end, when Luke says, the rebellion has just begun. I sat there and I think I said out loud, like, great, it's only been 40 freaking years. Like, it brought us back to before Episode 4. The whole thing's ludicrous, and to me, so nothing else really mattered. I mean, I'm not, like I said, I didn't want to be like, oh, I want to hate every moment, so I was trying to be open to, like, the little moments, but, like, honestly, it's pretty simple. Nothing else really matters, because the entire struggle that you're watching is the struggle of Princess Leia and her company and Luke Skywalker trying to defeat basically the Empire and do everything they did 40 years ago with the Resistance. It's different. It's the Resistance, not the Rebellion. I want to laugh every time they say that word. So that's where I went into it. It opens up and they're escaping from the planet just like in Empire Strikes Back. And I'm just thinking, this is god-awfully stupid. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And it basically went downhill from there. There were a few moments. We talked about the new characters. You really like them. I think some of that character stuff like Rey and Finn could work if it was another franchise, if it was another story. But even what they have is still, if it wasn't Star Wars, it would be okay, maybe. But because it is Star Wars, which is the only reason you're as hyped about it, is also the same reason that I think it's completely unforgivable as the story. Boom, there you go.
Well, I'll have to rebuttal some of those pointers, because you said that he flashed forward 30 years and he didn't start the Jedi Order and so on and so forth. He actually did.
Oh, right. He tried.
Hang on. They actually had flashbacks where he actually established the Jedi Order. He was training Ben. He was training other Jedi to become. He was in the midst of doing it, and something happened with Ben, and it fell apart. He tried to fulfill that legacy, because even Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker, brought up, I was supposed to be the legendary Luke Skywalker, and I started the Jedi Order, but I failed. I personally liked that. I liked how it shows that they took the icon that was Luke Skywalker, and they showed him that he was able to fail. And I actually kind of like that. But to say that
Return of the Jedi.
But to say that he didn't start the Jedi Order is untrue.
Oh my God. Okay, excuse me. I'll recant. He started to rebuild the Jedi Order. Bad thing happened, and he disappeared, and that was 10 years ago. And it's now been 30 years, and there's literally nothing to be shown. Nothing to be shown for the end of Return of the freaking Jedi, where that's the only thing that has to be like And when you finish watching that movie, that's the only thing that can't be messed with to me. It's like we come back, if we're gonna come back in 30 years and Luke's like, sorry, I'm gonna go head out. It's total horseshit. He'd never do it. It's ridiculous. It's asinine. And I'm sorry, but remember what I said about Captain Maria von Trapp? Oh, excuse me. So they tried their marriage for like 5 days, and then they got divorced. So it'd be the same concept. I just can't fathom how you enjoy this.
I didn't say I enjoyed it, but I understood it. I understood it and I accepted it, and I actually liked how he was going forward with it. But even then, you say there that you didn't understand how he hated it. He explained it in the character of Luke Skywalker. Explained it in the film.
Josh, you can explain a lot of things. You can explain a lot of things. It doesn't make it.
His nephew, and he failed him. He failed his nephew, so that's why he went dark.
You can explain a lot of things. It doesn't like motivation. If I'm a lawyer, I can talk about a murderer's motive. I need a motive to accuse him of the crime. His motive does not make it justification. And saying that's the reason Luke did it does not make it something that in any way, shape, or form makes sense, that the character would actually do, or that is acceptable as a story.
Now, Rian Johnson did say that this was one of the. I mean, I can tell this was one of the big risks, is because you're gonna have someone like Rian who loves Luke Skywalker so much that he went and took Luke into a different direction than where you were expecting to go. And now, initially, I actually didn't like it. At first, I thought, there actually was no way Luke would do this. But after I threw that my expectations out the window and I took the film for what it was, I accepted it and I actually liked it a little bit more because it took you on a path you weren't expecting with Luke Skywalker. So it was one of the risks initially I didn't like, but I did. But let's segue back here. Okay. So again, there's things I didn't like, that I liked, didn't like. Let's get it right at the gate. One of the biggest things I didn't like was, while I loved Finn and Rose, I loved their characters. I don't know how you felt, but I didn't like their storyline whatsoever. I mean, when they went to that planet and they went to go find the code breaker. And let's start before that. Even then, when they got a hold of Maz Kanata, I felt like that was so shoehorned in that it really bothered me, especially when you find out she's fighting off some people. It didn't really go into complete, utter detail, but it kind of felt forced, especially how was in the moment she was in, fighting all these people. How does she know exactly where this guy's going to be? He's going to be in this casino and whatnot. And I felt like it was a little forced and unbelievable in a sense. And even then, when they go to that place, I just didn't like it. It felt too prequel-y. It felt too cheesy. I didn't like how it looked. Now, what I will say was the only thing I liked about that is how they introduced the little child, and then at the very, very end of the movie, you see him using the Force, which I'll get to that message here a little bit later because it connects sort of to Rey. But I kind of liked. I did only like it for that aspect because it actually showed and introduced that kid, which you got at the very end of the movie. But other than that, some of the big things I thought was troubling was after seeing it a second time, I still had a problem with it. Was after you got the big throne scene, we'll get into that one there. But after you got done with the big throne scene and that got over with, and even then once they're the resistance is escaping, going towards that planet, I thought that would have been a good stopping point personally. But it just kept going and going. And while we did get that awesome Luke scene with the astral projection Luke scene, besides that, just from a filmmaking standpoint, it just kept going and going and sort of dragging for me to where I was just kind of toward the very end, I was kind of looking at my watch is this going to end? Because it had two great climactic moments, and for it just to keep going and going the way it did was bothersome for me. So, all right, but what else you got kind of jarring up in your head that you kind of had some problems with, or you may have liked?
I mean, not much. You're right. The Finn Rose thing just sort of fell flat for me. It wasn't super entertaining, and the only thing you got out of that is the story with Rey and Luke. I think is just the whole thing's just done. The whole basis of this trilogy is just let's repeat some of the same stuff so that our fans, the fans of Star Wars, can kind of be nostalgic. So none of it really matters. You talked about let's talk about one of the things that you were upset about, which I'm amazed by, which is Snoke. Go ahead and do your thing.
Snoke was a problem for me only because they built him up as such a powerful character. Because once you realize he was actually the reason that Rey and Kylo were able to be connected and have basically Skype, Force Skype, he was the reason. That just showed how powerful it was. But even when he was when in the very beginning with General Hux, when he's just a hologram and he's still able to like force, throw him to the ground. And just they built up his character so strongly as how powerful it was. But then when you get to actually the throne room, when they got to the throne room, besides not getting an explanation of Snoke and who he is and how he's connected to this world, I thought that was epic. I mean, just the tug of war between good and light between both characters, Rey and Kylo, was fantastic and fascinating to watch. And even the fight scene choreography was almost mind-blowing. It felt like a samurai 70s movie for me. But once they actually killed him off, and I was like, I sat there, like, I don't know if you heard me, but I was just kind of like, that's it? He's dead? I mean, I didn't get anything from him. I didn't get any hints to where he originally from. Because the only reason for me is because he, how do I word this? For how old he looks and how powerful he is, for him to not just be a literal no one, because he's been you can tell for how old he is. He's been around since the original trilogy, the storyline wise, and maybe even the prequels. For you not to get any knowledge of him whatsoever as to who he is and how he fits within this world was kind of a big problem for me, especially how strong in the Force he was with being a Sith. And once they killed him off, I was just kind of like, I really, really don't like that. I really didn't like, not even a hint in any form of fashion. It was a big problem for me. So that was what I wanted to bring up with Snoke. I hope we get more answers in Episode 9 in regards to Snoke, because for him to be able to know Luke and know Ben, when he was, when Kylo's not, he's Ben, to then all of a sudden persuade him to the dark side is like, where did he come from? I want to know that so I can care more. That's just for me. So, but let's kind of segue into some other things at the beginning.
Let's talk about that. I am astonished and amazed, A, that you care, and B, that you don't see this entire thing for what it is. When you watch these scenes and you're watching this Snoke guy who's Palpatine. I mean, he's Palpatine.
He didn't look like
watching this scene take place where he's like, and they've just shoehorned in this new empire that's completely taken over the galaxy, and it's a new Palpatine who's recruited a new. And you're watching these scenes where that's repeating the scenes from Return of the Jedi now, where he's like, "It was I who allowed you to. I established the mental bond." And you're watching this take place, and it's amazing that from the outset. From The Force Awakens, when they first said the word Snoke and talking about Kylo Ren and how he converted, Snoke seduced him and this whole thing and how he's the head of this new empire, that you're not just looking at this and be like, oh, they're just trying to like basically say Palpatine but not Palpatine, and they're coming up with a thing that took them 5 seconds to think of. They didn't put any thought into this character. It's complete nonsense. They know it. And maybe their genius is they're actually making people like you like actually think about it and like have these grand like, oh man, I really wanted to see where he was from or his place. I'm like, dude, it's like they don't care. And I think Rian Johnson even recognized that when he was writing the scenes for him. He was like,
for you to argue that though, that means you have to argue that ever since the Rule of Two was established by Darth Bane, it's been the same. There's been a master and an apprentice, someone who seduces someone to the dark side, and there's always that hooded, cloaked master.
Okay.
Snoke again.
Obviously, there's more specific reasons. There's obviously more specific.
You're
things
arguing
about
that ever since then that it's all just been pointless because it's the same thing over and over again, but that's just the lore of how Star Wars works as far as the Sith is concerned.
Depending on how you tell the story, it could be absolutely, which it is. I think I've already delineated why that is the case in this case.
Now, the only reason you could say he looked like Snoke, or Snoke looked like Palpatine, was in Force Awakens when he's just a ghost.
I'm not going to repeat.
But when you look at him,
I'm not going to repeat all the reasons why this is just nonsense and why this is just trying to recreate Palpatine and everything. But I think that Rian Johnson writing these scenes for this movie realized that, and he was just like, yeah, this is ridiculous. I'm just going to kill him off, and at least then I'll be doing something. I mean, the scenes leading up to that are just recreating Return of the Jedi, like, intentionally, like, to the point where I actually had my head in my hands. But I think, like, even in that case, Rian Johnson was maybe just, like, doing that with the intention of, and then I'll throw a wrench in it, and then Kylo Ren will just be the main bad guy because he's going to off him. When he offed him, it was basically like, okay, we're getting rid of that guy because that was just whatever. And what I said about this is literally, as far as the amount of thought put into it, as far as the amount of creativity put into it, this was the creation of this character was J.J. Abrams and company basically doing a creative. And I'm watching people pick through this crap being like, oh man, like, what do you think? Where do you think it's from? Like, where do you think this piece came from? Like, who cares? Like,
you don't care, but other people do.
Other people care, and that's really
But okay, besides, let's get into that still some more. Besides the fact that they killed him off without backstory, which I didn't like, I will say I liked the risk taking of sticking to the rule 2 within the realm of the dark side. What I mean
They're not
is,
even Sith, dude. Like,
but Kylo saying forget the Sith, but Snoke's,
no, they
Snoke's
were never
reason,
Sith. They were never Sith.
Yes,
so
they
get off
were.
of that. Okay. Fine.
Okay, but sticking to the rule of 2 aspect that he killed off his master and now he is the master. Like, because they could have easily done the whole, oh, I killed off Palpatine, and like you, like they could have went your direction, what you thought they were going to do, and go, oh, I'm going to kill off my master like Vader did, and I'll be a good guy again. No, they actually took a risk and have him kill off his master and show that he's still so corrupt in his anger and his jealousy and his selfishness that because after that happened, all of a sudden he's like, Rey, stay with me. We can build this together. He basically wanted her to be his apprentice, and she said no. And that, to me, I loved that because it stuck to that. Like, it showed, yeah, he's struggling with the light side, but he's still at his core just a bad guy. And I like that polarizing with him and Rey, and it showed, yeah, that it's still continuing on. That, yeah, he doesn't want to be Sith River. He'd probably do the Knights of Ren, whatever. I'm okay with that. I actually want to explore the Knights of Ren a little bit more. But I just liked that aspect, at least for me. So let's kind of go back. Let's talk about some different characters besides, some ones we've already brought up. But we haven't really brought up Rey. Mm-hmm. What did you think? Kind of give some decent explanations for what you think of Rey besides what we've already talked about. Like, anything? Did you like for me? Did you like how they explained where she's from?
I don't really care. I think it's a very strong possibility. I mean, and Rian Johnson's even kind of stated like there's no continuity between what the writers are doing. He doesn't know what J.J. Abrams is going to do with that in the third film. He said, I'm not involved with the writing of the third film, so I just wrote it, and all I know is that Kylo thought it was true, and she thought it was true, so there you go. The only thing about that whole thing that I liked was at the end, when the Resistance is running away, and okay. So again, before 1977, we could be here. But when the Resistance was running away, and Rey came back at that moment, that's just classic good writing, where it's like one character's arc leads him to that one place at the end where they're reunited, and where she has to move the rocks. That was and then that's the only reason they get out is because she came in at that moment. That's just classic good screenwriting. And there's that moment when they see each other again, Finn and Rey, and they hug. And that was, for me, you asked, like, is there anything you liked? And I went on my whole spiel about the girl and framing for murder. This was one of those good aspects where, even in The Force Awakens, which was just an absolute garbage story to begin with, but their journey in that film together was one of the few things I liked. And to see, and then they've spent this entire film apart and they're reunited in that way. I thought that was a really nice moment. So,
yeah. For me, I actually, like, some people were like, they're wanting her to be either, a Skywalker or a Kenobi. I actually liked the idea that she is legit nobody, just like Finn and just like Poe. They have no real connections to, like, the lore of the stories that we have been following since the original trilogy. And the reason I liked it is because I remember some people, like, when she had that scene with The Force Awakens where, Obi-Wan's talking to her, these are your first steps. She has all those visions when she holds the lightsaber. At first, people thought, and even I thought, oh, that could mean she's a Kenobi or a Skywalker. But what it really, to me, meant was it was just the Force itself talking to her, calling to her, because they realized just how naturally powerful she is, that she could be someone who ushers in either a new, the new revamping of the Force within the galaxy. And I liked that a lot. And even because that counteracts to the very end with that child, where you still see the Force is still at work here within the universe and in the galaxy in the story. That kid, he just grabs the broom and he keeps going. That you can tell that, to me, that hinting to the future, that Rey will eventually probably usher in I actually don't want to say a Jedi Order. I actually don't think so. From how I've interpreted her character, in my opinion, she, to me, is going to be the first Grey Jedi. And the first time that they introduced the Grey Jedi lore within the Star Wars movies. And if those of you don't know who the Grey Jedi are, go check it out online. I don't want to go too far in depth with it. But basically, they use both the light and the dark. That's that very middle ground. Because if you see, she uses her anger to give herself power, but she uses her good judgment and logic and sound mind to make better decisions. Which is kind of how that, like I said, it's that give and take between the light and the dark. And I love that. And I think she will usher in a new era of gray Jedi Order. And, I like the fact that it's hinting towards that, at least in my personal interpretation. If you guys have any other thoughts, leave your comments and share thoughts on that aspect of the movie. One other thing that I still really liked and near and dear was Carrie Fisher's performance. Like, I don't know how you felt, but I thought she did a great job. I mean, when I first saw her on screen, I teared up. Not going to lie. It was very hard to see her at first. But I liked the fact that they introduced, I don't know how you felt. You can comment if you'd like, but she was actually able to use the Force to survive. I don't know, what did you think of that scene taking place in that very beginning scene?
That was nice.
That was very nice. I actually liked it, and it showed that she still have Force powers, and her performance still was spectacular. But any other thoughts you have kind of going about the film?
Not really. I think I basically got it all out, mostly. I mean, it's astonishing to me that there's still going to be people who really just don't really honestly think of this as something that people put as, at least as far as the impetus, the outset. Like maybe Rian Johnson put some thought into this film, but that people will still think that this whole storyline of the First Order and the Resistance and the Knights of Ren, that people will still think that this had anything to do with people putting thought into it, or that it's anywhere near approaching a story worth telling. Whatever, you say what you can say, and then that's all you can do. So,
one other thing I actually forgot to bring up is, did you even like how they introduced more Force powers into this with the astral projection and basically the Force Skyping and stuff like that? Like, I don't know about you, but I've always wanted them to expand more of the basics of the Force powers that we've been introduced to in the movies, and even in some of the lore. I love the fact that they are able to portray that. And it shows just how powerful Luke was as far as doing basically astral projection, making a copy of himself on the other side of the galaxy. And it just shows how powerful he was. And even then, Snoke, for that matter, to be able to connect Rey and Kylo to be able to talk the way they did. I liked how that all transpired. And let's talk about one last thing that brings you up to the Luke Skywalker. Did you like how they killed him off?
Hell no, that was the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. Well, we said coming out of the movie theater, it's like, what happened? Like, I guess we wanted to kill Luke off, we had no way for him to die, so he just fucking dies.
I remember when I first watched the movie, I thought the same thing. But
okay.
After watching it the second time, I realized something, because when Kylo and Rey first meet, they even said, how are we doing this? And he goes, are you doing this? And he goes, no, you couldn't, because the amount of power it takes would kill you. Like, the amount of power it takes to give yourself an astral projection or, be able to connect the way it does would kill you. So
that's a line?
Yeah, it actually said it in the story. Because I watched the second time, I noticed that. So then to actually watch, so that just shows how powerful Snoke is on his own, which makes me also think if he's even really dead, but that's a whole nother discussion. But to see Luke have the ability to do that, take an astral projection across the galaxy and last as long as he did, at first I didn't like the death because I was on the fence. I really was. But after seeing it a second time and watching it transpire and having that line and watching it transpire throughout, it made sense. And I actually liked it because it just showed he was able to hold off with that astral projection as long as he could, and it just drained him. Like, it just completely drained him to the point where it killed him. And then now he's also but how he died also just means he's also one with the Force. So you'll definitely see him in Episode 9 as a Force ghost, probably mentoring Rey as she goes along. But just, I at first I didn't like it, but I liked it now. I will say that. So let's wrap up over your overall thoughts. I guess you can't recommend people seeing it, can you?
Yeah, well, no.
Even though I gave it, I think, a 6.5 out of 10 from the very beginning. We've been on this for a long time. I still liked it. There was a lot I didn't like, and a lot I liked. I will say I didn't like some of the jokes. Some of the jokes landed for me, and some I didn't. I felt like they were kind of forced in, which kind of ruined it for me a little bit too. I wish they would have kept with a darker tone than what they did. But I digress. I still think you should check it out. I still think you'll find a lot of enjoyment out of it. There are, it kind of sucks because we're actually in the minority where there's things we liked and didn't like. A lot of people are raving and ranting about it, which is great. If you love it, I am very happy for you. Please leave your comments of what you liked and didn't like and give us your score out of 10 and kind of let's get some discussions going in the comments below, and I'll be there to kind of comment as well. If you see comments from us, it'll be from me or maybe even from him. We'll see. But yes, I can still say you guys can check it out. I think what makes me want to come back for this is now the characters. Rey's character Finn's character, Poe, and even Kylo. I actually liked all their characters. They're very dynamic and very interesting, that it makes me want to see how they continue the story of Star Wars going forward. So that's all we have for you guys today, folks. Thank you very much for watching. This is a long video. I think we're going to break it up into 2 parts. It'll be 15 minutes each, and we'll kind of go from, so you guys can check it out and not have to watch a whole long video. But leave your comments in the section below. Let us know what you liked and didn't like again, and give us your score out of 10. Also, if you like what you watched, then please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel so you can receive more of our various content in the future. Also, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. The links are in the description below. That's all we have for you today, folks. I'm Josh Williams.
And I'm Ryan Murphy.
And thank you for keeping it real.
With ReelTime.